The biggest part of MTSS is the progress monitoring. How are the students doing when interventions have been put into place? This documentation is so important because if students continue to struggle and you as a classroom teacher are trying to get to the bottom of it and bring the student to the school's student improvement team or intervention team, you have to be able to explain what you've tried, how long you've tried it, and what didn't work. If you tried 4 or 5 different strategies within a 2-week time period, it would be hard to know if the strategies didn't work or if they just weren't given a chance to work. It is important to try the same intervention for at least 2 entire weeks before deciding to change it. An intervention would be the strategy you are using with specific students to improve their understanding. Then, you can't just collect the data, but you need to look at the data and talk about the data. My former principal had monthly data checks where teachers brought their progress monitoring to discuss their students' progress. You really need to know your students. Here is one example of a data log used by a math tutor. She recorded the skills she was working on with her Tier 3 student down the left-hand side of the table. Then, as the student was progress monitored every week, his scores were entered into the columns on the right side. At the end of the 5-week period, the teacher was able to show growth as the progress monitoring scores increased each week. This data table might look familiar to you. Many teachers use data tables like this to record their assessment scores. Student names would be recorded down the left-hand side. Objectives would be written across the top. This table is easy to read. I can glance at it and see some strong areas. Notice the 100s that jump out at you. However, many teachers take this type of chart to the next level to make it even easier to analyze. This is the same chart with one simple change. It is color-coded. Some teachers call this type of data chart a Go Green chart. Why? Because green is the goal. You'll notice scores above 70 are green. 70 must be the criteria for mastery here. Yellow would be for student scores approaching or developing. Red would be scores for students who are way below the expectations. Data charts like these are easy to read. I see one student who struggled in every single objective. I see some objectives where quite a few students struggled. It is clear which objectives are problems for specific students and which objectives need to be retaught to the majority of the class. You might wonder whether students stay in the specific MTSS tiers. Well, sometimes they do, but sometimes they move. Tier 3 typically stays constant. These students are students who don't just struggle with what is currently being taught. They struggle with skills that were taught previously, sometimes in previous grade levels. Tier 1 and 2 students do move more often in between the tiers, especially in math. For example, one math unit might be more difficult to a specific student than another math unit. Many schools adjust their tiers monthly or quarterly. Today we focused on the multi-tiered system of support geared toward academics. Don't forget, this system of support is also in place in many schools for behavior interventions as well. Many districts and schools have positive behavior intervention programs in place. One example would be CHAMPS. Much like academics, data is collected for the students in the school. Which students struggle to meet the behavior expectations continuously? Which students struggle every once in a while? What interventions can be put into place in order to keep the focus on all students? And how can schools be proactive instead of reactive? These are all questions schools work to answer as they implement their MTSS behavior intervention supports. Differentiation is so important, and good teachers differentiate all day long in every single subject. Kansas has an excellent system in place to help us and support us as we differentiate in our classrooms. Please think about everything you learned today. How can you immediately go back to student teaching and apply it in your thinking, in your planning, in your teaching, and your assessment?